All right, we are right at the top of the hour here, or actually at the bottom of the hour. We're at 3:30 Eastern, and we have somebody, Anthony Chara, coming in all the way from the Bahamas. So he is in the Bahamas, taking some time out of his time there, relaxing at the Atlantis Resort. Going to be sharing with us today, and the topic today is going to be finding the right property management company for you and your property. So I'm going to have you go ahead and did you have a presentation PowerPoint to share as well, Anthony? For some reason, the audio's not working on your end. Nope, still not coming in.
There we go.
There we go. Now
There
we
we go.
can hear you.
So I know there's a lot of snow going back in the United States, so just in case you guys were interested what the Atlantis Resort looks like and the Bahamas look like. And yes, this is where Scott Carson was the other day too. So for those of you that saw Scott Carson's presentation, we're down here at another event and having a great time. So, all right. So let's see, I need to share my presentation, correct, Dan?
Yep, that's correct. I just took my camera off so everybody can see the full screen of your background there, because that's beautiful down there.
Got it. Yep, it is gorgeous. There we go. How's that?
Yep, that looks great. I'm going to give you a quick introduction of you as well real quick, but trying to get, it's not letting me go live. I'll fix this shortly. So for some reason that's not working properly, but I will do your quick introduction here and then I'll let you take it away while I fix it after we get started. So we have Anthony Chara with us. He's a managing member of Apartment Mentors and the founder of Success Classes, having mentored several thousand aspiring real estate investors. He owns and or has syndicated over 1,800 apartment units around the country. In addition to offering training on apartment investing, he also has created several investment groups and raised over $15 million to fund his acquisitions. So Anthony, I'm going to have you take it away. I'm going to turn my video and audio off, but I'll be in the background in case any issues occur.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for inviting me to the Multifamily Investor Nation. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you're staying nice and warm there, wherever you are, and out of the snow and the cold and the ice. I hear it's pretty messy back in some areas of the Midwest and the Northeast. So let's take your mind off of it with a presentation here on finding the right property management company. This is actually one of the sections that I used to do as part of my boot camp. So there's actually 3 parts to this. And the main thing that you need to understand is that 80% of property management is about, has nothing to do with the property. It has to do with managing the tenants, or what I do, I prefer to call them residents. By calling them residents, if you notice, if you ever pull up to a really nice apartment complex, it doesn't say parking for future tenant, it says parking for future resident. So I like to use the word resident, but it really is about finding the right property manager who's going to take care of the residents, and taking care of the property, of course, is part of that, but most of it is finding and making sure that you have the right management company that puts in the right people into your property. So as I mentioned before, this is actually part of another presentation that I do. So there's actually 3 main steps to it. I'm not going to go through all of it. One is, of course, managing the property yourself, which I actually don't recommend. What we're going to be talking about today is finding a qualified management company to manage the property for you. And we're also not going to be talking a lot about creating your own property management company itself, but I might touch on that a little bit when we get to the end, depending on how much time we have left in the presentation. So let me skip through here very, very quickly and get to section 2, which is about you finding the right property management company. And we're almost there. Oh, there we went. All right. So we're going to talk about you finding a qualified management company to manage your properties. First off, why not do it yourself? Well, it's very simple. For me, buying and owning an apartment complex is a business. You're not actually buying a piece of property. You're buying a business that generates a stream of income. That business needs to support itself. And supporting itself doesn't mean you go out and you find the residents and you take care of the repairs and you go to Lowe's and Home Depot and you pick up the parts and the paint and come back and do what you need to do. It's about the property taking care of itself. So it has to cash flow in such a way that it pays for a property manager to manage the property so you don't have to worry about it. So how do you find the right property manager? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. There's some designations that you can look for so that you can find people that have some extra training. And it's not always a be all end all that because somebody has some type of management training that's going to make them a good property manager. Quite frankly, there's some people out there that are just naturals at it and have very little training. But it's a great place to start when you look for people that have certain designations, because at least you know they have some background and some qualifications because somebody out there taught them something, as opposed to somebody just getting a real estate license and throwing up a sign someplace that says, hey, I've got a real estate license, I'm a property manager. No, they're not. I've met a lot of property managers that had no idea what they were doing because they weren't property managers. They were just real estate agents that were looking for some extra income and said, yeah, I can manage your property too. So we'll talk about some of the designations, and then what questions do you ask? There's some questions that you should be asking your property managers to make sure that you're finding the right one. And again, even though you're asking the right questions, don't be afraid to make a change moving forward, because there's a lot of property managers out there that the phrase that I use is they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. What does that mean? That means that you ask them all these great questions, they give you all the right answers, so you hire them, because they hit the nail right on the head with every single question you asked. But then when it comes right down to it, they don't do what they say they're going to do. They don't put in the right tenants. They don't screen them properly. And then when people don't pay, they come up with an excuse. Well, if we kick them out, then you're going to have extra vacancies and a 40% vacancy on the property, and that's worse than leaving people in there. No, it's not. Your property manager needs to kick people out if they're not paying. Now, that doesn't mean they can't come up with some type of a payment solution where they maybe pay weekly as opposed to paying once a month. There's a great thing out there called payday leases, which we're not going to get into right now, but if somebody has a question later on in the presentation and we have time, I can talk more about how payday leases can help your residents actually stay in the property. It's better for you, it's better for them. So there are workarounds if somebody doesn't pay rent, but you still need to make sure the manager is going to follow the letter of the lease. All right, so how do you find the right property manager? Well, one of the things that you can do is there's a couple different websites that you can go to. One is irem.org, irem.org. There's a lot of property managers out there that have gone through training with IREM. This is actually part of the National Real Estate National Realtors Association, are people that have their national license and they've gone through extra training that you can find on the IREM website, or IREM. You can go to irem.org, you can click on advanced search, you can actually look for property managers in your area, but you do need to be careful, because just because they're listed on there as a property manager doesn't necessarily mean that they're qualified or their specialty is apartments or whatever type of commercial property it is that you're looking to purchase. So you want to, when the name comes up in a particular market, you want to click on their name and then actually read their biography to see what they specialize in, because they may not be the right person for you. Another great place is the local apartment association. If you own apartment buildings in certain areas around the country, you should belong to the apartment association in those cities. Assuming that your city is large enough to have an apartment association, that's a great resource for you to find good property managers that are recommended by other people, other owners that go to those same apartment association meetings. Another website you can check out is CCIM, which stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member. These are also people that have been through their training program and have hours and hours of education. Plus, in order to get their designations, which we'll talk about in the next couple of slides that are coming up, in order to get their designation, they have to have been involved in a certain number of actual live transactions. So it's not just the training that they get, but then they actually have to take that training and go out and prove it and utilize it in the real world environments. Another great website is NARPM. So IREM and CCIM, and sometimes the Apartment Association, is a great place to start looking for good property managers. But most of those property managers on those websites only handle the larger properties. Sometimes 100 or 200 units or more before they're even consider managing your property. NARPM has managers that will actually work on smaller properties. So if you have a 6-plex, a 10-plex, a 12-plex, a 20-plex, you're more likely going to find someone that will manage your property, your smaller properties, at that particular website. So these are all great websites: irem.org, Apartment Association, and of course CCIM website is ccim.com, and then narpm.org. The last one is referrals. I always recommend to my students that when you're talking to people like real estate agents, lenders, appraisers, even property managers, occasionally you're going to talk to a property manager that, let's say you have a 20-unit property, and you say, hey, I'm buying a 20-unit C-class property in Dallas. Can you help me with that? And they say no. Well, don't just stop there because they said no. Ask that manager, first off, ask them why. And if they say, well, we only handle 200 units and up, then say, okay, great. Can you refer me to someone you know and trust that can help me with my 20-unit apartment building? And it's very important that you say no and trust. Don't just ask for a referral. I used to ask for referrals and I'd get lists that were 20, 30 people that were referred. But as soon as I started adding in people that you know and trust, that list dropped down to a microscopic amount. It was amazing. So that tells you a little bit about that particular area, that maybe there aren't a lot of good property managers out there that people know and trust, but those are the managers that you want to find, the ones that people know and trust. Ask at the apartment association. When you go to the local real estate groups, there's the National Real Estate Investors Association. They have groups all over the country. Go to those meetings, even if they're not part of the National Real Estate Investor Association. Go to real estate club meetings around. I know that through Meetup and other websites and word of mouth, there's meetup groups that meet at lunchtime, dinner time, weekends. Go to the groups and ask them for referrals to people they know and trust. It's a great way to narrow your focus down very, very quickly to help you find the people that you really, really want to have managing your properties. I mentioned earlier about designations. Well, with CCIM, which is a Certified Commercial Investment Member, people get a CCIM designation. So when people say that they're a CCIM because they went and got this extra education and then, of course, proved it through the different work that they did, whether it was managing properties or selling properties or listing properties, analyzing properties, whether they were helping as a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, and they can get that CCIM designation. IREM also has several designations. One is a CPM. That's for an individual to become a certified property manager. Before they become a certified property manager, they have to become a CPM candidate, and then they have at least 1 year of classwork and experience to go through, but they have to complete the training within 10 years. Then you also have an accredited residential manager. That's somebody that can actually manage an entire complex for you. And then, of course, you have an accredited management organization, an AMO, which means the organization, the management company itself, is organized. Now, you can have a CPM that works for a management company, and the management company may not be accredited. You can also have an accredited management organization that has managers working for them that are not certified property managers or CPM. So double check the accreditations for both the property manager and the company itself to see if one or both have some type of designation or extra training. With RPM, the designation is a MPM, which is a master property manager. You also have a certified support specialist. That's somebody that might be an office assistant. If they go through some extra training, they can get certified. And then, of course, just like CCIM, you can also have the entire company get certified through the CRMC, which is a Certified Residential Management Company. Again, it's not necessarily a hands down. If you get one of these people that has a certification, they're going to be fantastic, but it certainly helps because they do have the extra education. Once you do find a lot of these managers, or a couple good managers in this particular area where your property is located, now you want to start asking them questions. You need to interview them. Number one, you're going to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're looking for, the type of property you're buying or the type of property you already own, and then you're going to ask them some questions. So number one is, how long have you been in business? Sometimes you want somebody who does have experience, because if they're just brand new and they've only been doing it for a year or two, I'll tell you right now, they haven't made enough mistakes, because that's really where you learn as a human being, is not through all of your successes. You learn more from your mistakes. So if a manager's just getting started, they may not have made enough mistakes to actually be a good property manager, because they don't have enough experience to potentially help you. So I like companies that have been around at least 5 years or longer. I also want to see whether or not they're licensed, and that's a two-part question. Number one, do they have to be licensed in their state to manage your property? In most states, property managers have to have a real estate license in order to manage the property for you, because it's not their property. They're managing it as a third-party vendor. They also might need to have a business license. In order to run their business, they might also have to have a business license. And so what you want to do is you want to check both. You want to see, number one, whether or not they have their real estate license or if they need it. And number two, you want to see if they actually have a business license, and then check both licenses. Call the real estate commission or whatever it's called in your state and find out how long they've been a licensed real estate agent. Find out whether or not they've had any complaints filed against them or been suspended or reprimanded in some way, shape, or form. You also want to check with the business organization in the state. Sometimes it's the Secretary of State, to see if they've had any complaints, or even the Better Business Bureau to see if they've had complaints. By the way, there is a way around the licensing requirement. I don't recommend it though, but you can do it, and that is by you hiring someone directly as one of your employees, because they're now your employee and they work directly for you as the owner of the company. In a lot of states, actually I think in all states that at least I've checked into so far, if they're your employee and you're the direct owner of the property, they usually don't have to have a real estate license to be the property manager. Okay, you want to find out if they do have any type of professional designations like CPM, CCIM, ARO, things like that. You also want to find out what kind of properties they specialize in. Again, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to a website and click on somebody who comes up under IREM, and they're listed because they're a property manager, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they specialize in your type of apartment buildings. As most of you are out there know, I'm sure Dan has a lot of great experienced people who are on the webinar this weekend, and I hope you guys have been enjoying it, because we're almost at the end of the three-day period. You probably learned a ton of great stuff. There are different classifications of property. There's A, B, C, and even D. Well, just because somebody manages an A-class property, which is the real nice, spectacular, gorgeous properties that are around and fairly new, that doesn't qualify them to manage a C-class property, because the residents that live in both of those properties have completely different mentalities. Most A-class residents are what you would call short-timers, and they basically have a homeowner mentality. A lot of them do, not all of them, but a lot of them have a homeowner mentality. They're spending all this money on an apartment because sometimes they're in transition. They're coming in for a new job. They're trying to find a new place to live, so they're there for 6 or 12 months, and then they're gone. C-class properties, you have a lot of people that just, the reality is, what do you mean I have to pay rent this month? You're rich. Can't I just skip a month? You're not going to miss it. It's not going to hurt you. It's like, no, completely different mentality. And the property manager has to be prepared to go around and actually knock on doors to get people to pay, which is unfortunate. But some A-class property managers don't get that. They don't understand it. Quite frankly, I don't understand it, but I've come to learn that that's part of what you need to do in order to get paid from some of your residents. So find out what kind of property they specialize in, not only the classification, but again, just because they specialize in managing an industrial warehouse or an office complex does not necessarily qualify them to manage an apartment complex. So double check that. Also, you want to find out how many units they manage. Are they too big? Or are they too small? We've had management companies that managed 1,400 units in one area and another manager someplace else that managed 200 units. Well, the people that managed 1,400 units, we were potentially getting lost in the shuffle. And then even the manager that managed 200 units, even though it was a lot lower, that person was still overwhelmed because he didn't have the support structure in place. He didn't have the staff in place. It was him doing everything. So we actually passed on him as well too, because even though we would have had more focus on our management and our complex, we knew that he wasn't going to be able to provide us with the time necessary unless he was willing to bring more support staff on to take care of us and the other ones. You also want to find out where the unit's at in the area where your property is located and get the address, because you want to drive by and look at their property. You want to see what it looks like. Now, don't be don't be concerned. I shouldn't say concerned. Don't freak out if you go buy a property and you find out it's in bad condition. I used to do that, and I drive by a property and look and go, oh my God, this is in terrible shape, and you want to be my property manager. I found out through my own experience by having a really bad partner on a couple of deals that I did years and years and years ago, that sometimes the property manager is doing what they want to do and what they can do, but the owner of the property is the problem. They won't give the manager enough tools or money to do what they need to do to take care of the property. So it's great to go by and look at the properties. And of course, if they all look spectacular, that's even better. But if you find one that's in bad condition, don't just immediately discount them. Find out from the manager what's going on. Ask them to tell you the story about this property and why it looks like it's in such bad shape. And then if possible, if they make a comment that, hey, yeah, the owner just won't give me enough money to actually go do it, even though I want to, then see if they can give you the name and phone number of the owner so you can call them up and confirm that. Now, of course, you don't want to be right in their face and actually say, hey, your manager said you won't give them any money. But you can just ask them questions about, hey, I'm thinking about hiring this manager. What do you think of them? Are they doing the job? Are they taking care of your unit? Are they, if you give them money, are they spending that money wisely? And just find out from the owner. And if you can do this often enough, you'll be able to tell from talking with different people whether it's the owner that really is the problem or if it's the property manager just blowing smoke. All right. Other questions you want to ask? What about the reputation of the management company? What kind of reputation do they have in the area? That's where you want to talk to them about different, get different feedback from their current, not only their current customers, but also their former customers. I was asked for referrals let me get back here. I got one more to go. Right, from past referrals. I want to find out people that no longer use them. I want that information as well too, because I want to find out why they no longer use them. Is it because they sold the property and they moved on? Is it because they weren't happy with this particular property manager? I actually have one of my students that was kind of interesting. When he asked the seller why he was selling the property, he told him that he was selling the property because he couldn't come to fire the property manager. He felt that the property manager was a pain in the butt, but rather than just firing the property manager, he figured the easy way out was to sell the property to somebody else and then let them deal with it. And usually I guess that new owner would come in and just automatically tell the property manager that their services were no longer needed. So make sure you get somewhere between 3 and 5 current references of who they're managing now, and then 3 to 5 of their past clients. You also want to find out what kind of turnover rate they have with their current staff. A good company is going to have staff on board for years and years and years. But if the average employee of that company is only there 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, there's something going on. Either they're not paying enough money, or people don't like them and they don't want to work for them for a long period of time. Certainly, you may not be able to actually verify the information they give you, but it's always interesting to hear the answers that the property managers give you when you ask them about the longevity of their staff and their turnover rate. And of course, you find out the reputation of the company by going to the apartment association and asking other owners if they've heard anything about it. As a matter of fact, speaking of reputation, we had some students a few years ago that were getting a property, and as part of their loan package that they gave to the lender, of course, they put in all their information, the property numbers, they gave their background to the loan company, the lender. And then one of the other things they put in is they put in the property resume for the property management company and said, this property management company is going to manage the property for us because, hey, Anthony taught us we don't do it ourselves. The property has to pay for somebody else to take care of it, a professional manager. Well, the management or the lender took a look at the property resume and said, oh, you're using ABC Property Management? Yeah, if you're going to use them, we're not going to give you a loan. It's like, wow, that's a shock. You're not going to give us a loan if we use ABC Property Management? And they said, no, we have a bad reputation with them. There's just a lot of friction. We don't get along. That tells you volumes about that particular company, that apparently there's something going on that you weren't aware of and you weren't able to uncover. But if the lender won't give you a loan if you use them to manage your property, that's good to know. Another thing you want to find out is what's their marketing strategy. What are they doing? What kind of steps do they take? What kind of processes do they have in place to market the property to residents? Do they offer some type of resident referral incentive? A resident referral incentive could be, you've got a current resident in the property right now, and you're trying to fill another vacancy. So one of the things you want to do is potentially reward your current residents. One of the things that we do is we write a letter to our good residents. Now, what defines a good resident? Great question. I'm glad you asked. There's 3 things that make up a good resident. Number 1, they pay the rent on time. Number 2, they get along with their neighbors. And number 3, they take care of the unit. So they pay the rent on time every month, they get along with their neighbors, they take care of the unit. Those 3 things. We send a letter to those residents and we thank them for being a great resident. We say, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, thank you so much for being an awesome resident at our complex. And we're very grateful that you're here. We're very appreciative of you being a wonderful member of our community. We also want to take this opportunity to remind you about our resident referral program, and let us tell you a little bit about that." And what we do is we go through and we step by step say, "Hey, here's what we'll do. If you refer someone to us who comes in, they reference your name, so it has the original application when they come in. It can't be after they move in. It has to be right on the original application. If they are qualified and they sign a 12-month lease and move in, you get a choice of these different items, and it could be $100 off their rent for the next month, and it could be higher too. You have to make it commensurate with the type of resident that they're referring to you. It could be $500 off, it could be $1,000 off, but let's say it's $100 off. Or your next choice is we'll put a ceiling fan in one of your rooms, or we might paint one of your rooms, or we might give you a microwave oven. And we'll give them 3 or 4 different things and say, "Hey, based on these different things, what do you want?" So it's a great way to incentivize your current residents. And this is what you want to find out from the property manager. Do they have a program like this? Don't tell them right up front what you do or what I just told you I do. Find out from them if they have one in place. You'd be shocked to find out that a lot of these management companies, they don't even think about it. And of course, if it's really, really easy to rent properties in a certain area, they may not have to worry about a resident referral program. But it's always good to know that they have one in place. Certainly, it's very important to know how long it takes on average to rent a unit. You want to be able to have that unit re-rented within a week or 2, literally. So that means as soon as somebody moves out, they've got a crew in the unit doing what's called a turn. They're making it rent ready. They're cleaning or removing the or replacing the carpet. They're cleaning the walls or painting the walls. They're fixing the appliances, the cabinets, the door handles, doorknobs, light fixtures, putting in light bulbs, whatever it is. They should be in and out in less than a week. Usually it should only be 2 or 3 days. And then of course they should be constantly marketing to make sure that they have a steady stream of people coming through the door so that they can have people ready to go and move into your property within just a few weeks. So find out what their average turn time is. It's very important. How do they view the unit? How do prospective residents view the unit? I actually had one manager I met one time that couldn't walk the property. So she had some issues with her legs. And so she just handed the key to the prospective resident and say, "Yeah, it's unit number 10. Just go over there up the stairs and let yourself in. Make sure you lock the door and come on back." Well, they weren't actually selling the unit. I want my property managers to take them to the unit. And before they even get to the unit, they should be asking the resident questions. What are you looking for? Are you looking for a first floor unit, second floor unit, top floor unit? Are you looking for a view? Are you looking for something near the pool, away from the pool, overlooking the freeway, away from the freeway? What are they looking for? Large bedroom, small bedrooms, large kitchen, small kitchen. And then what they do is they should take them to a unit that matches their criteria and then sell those items. So if somebody wanted a large kitchen, when they walk in, they go, "Oh, look at this large, spacious kitchen. Look at all the cabinet space. Oh, here's the bedrooms. Look how large they are. Everything's nice and clean. It's completely painted and ready to go for you to move in." And they get people excited. One of the things you can actually do is you can shop your prospective property managers without them knowing, whether you do it or you have somebody on your staff do it or a family member or somebody. They can walk in and pretend that they're a prospective resident and listen and make notes, mental notes, as to how that property manager takes them through the property and shows that they should sell them the property, not just walk them in and say, "Yeah, go to look around and let us know what you think." That doesn't sell the property. That doesn't make people want to live there, which is what you're looking for. You also want to get a copy of their lease agreement. What are they using with the residents? Because you want to go through it yourself to make sure that there's a lot of good key things in there about evictions, late payments, what's it going to take to get that person out? Do they have a reward program if people pay early? Do they have a referral program? Look at it up and down, back and forth. And then also, it's a good idea to have your attorney review it just to make sure that there isn't any key components that are missing. You also want to know if the residents can reach the management company 24 hours a day. If they have an emergency, is there a number that they can call, number one? And number two, will somebody answer the phone and get back to them in a timely manner? If there's a flood going on or a unit is on fire, is that a possibility? The answer better be yes. So other things you want to ask them how they qualify their residents. What kind of criteria do they have in place? There's a couple things that they should be asking the residents. Number one, you want to make sure that they have a good credit background. Now, some credit bureaus have discounted late payments for things like medical bills and that kind of stuff, which is fine. But you still want to double check their credit score if they credit qualify. Obviously, if you're getting a Section 8 resident, somebody that doesn't have a credit score and they don't even have a job, there's not going to be a very good credit score or very low credit score. And of course, they're not going to have a lot of income or any income. So there's some things that you can discount for a variety of reasons, but the main things you want to focus on is they do need to have a good credit score, and you're going to set that credit score. Your property management company should tell you what their criteria is. Usually there's a threshold, and just for this presentation, let's say that threshold is score of 600. So 600, score of 600 or higher, for that line only, they're automatically qualified. If it's below 600, they're what we would call in our particular properties, and what I've trained my managers to do, is a qualified approval. The qualified approval means, or a conditional approval, they're conditionally approved if they're willing to do something else. Something else could be, instead of 1 month's rent, they put in 1.5 months rent. Because your credit score is so low, if you give us 1.5 months rent for a security deposit, we will qualify you conditionally on that line item, and then you can move in. But that's just that one line item. There's still other line items they have to go through. There's a line item on their work history. What kind of work history do they have? Are they constantly jumping around from job to job every 6 months? If they are, that's not good for you, because if they're getting a new job every 6 months, guess what? They may not be able to pay the rent in between job 1 and job 2, or job 4 and job 5. You also want to look, of course, at their income. You need to make sure they have enough income to support themselves and pay the rent in that particular property. Our minimum is generally 3 times rental income to rent. 3 times income to rent, gross income. So if the unit rents for $1,000 a month, they need to gross at least $3,000 a month. That way they have enough to pay the rent, plus buy food, pay their electricity, pay for clothes and everything else, and probably their car payment and that kind of stuff. So 3 times rent to income. Another one you want to look at is their criminal background. You want to make sure that they're not sex offenders, that they're not rapists, that they're not drug dealers, that they didn't, rob a bank 5 years ago with a gun, rob somebody at gunpoint, and you have a convicted felon. Now, you do need to be careful, because HUD has changed some of their guidelines. So you can't, they've asked that you just not arbitrarily put anybody with a felony into one bucket. So double check with your property manager to see what their criteria is, and make sure that you're okay with it. You can certainly ask your property manager to make some changes to the criteria for your property, but they may not want to change it at all, or number two, depending on what you're asking them to change, it may be illegal or unethical for them to do some of those things. So just have a conversation with the manager if you find one that you like, and see if they're open to suggestions. I always recommend that our management companies charge for the application fee. I don't want to pay that, and certainly they don't want to pay that, but there is a fee that they're going to pay to do the background check, the criminal history check, the credit check, and those types of things. So usually that's a pass-through. Whatever the resident pays goes to the management company. The management company turns around and pays the company that they use to do all the background checks. So I do recommend charging for an application fee. So you want to find out if they charge and how much they charge. And even simple things like, how do they handle a bounce check? Do they immediately evict the person? Do they give them a pay or quit notice? Do they call them into the office discreetly and say, hey, we got a problem, your check bounced, there's an issue here? How do they handle it? Just ask the question. What about late payments? I mentioned earlier about payday leases. You can actually have people that if they're constantly paying late every single month, one option that you can come up with is putting them on what's called a payday lease, where they don't pay once a month, they pay every time they get a paycheck. And it's a great way for twofold. Number one, they're not going to be late anymore. And number two, you're actually going to make more money if you go through that whole program. And like I said, if there's time at the end, I can go into that if you're interested in learning more. How do they take care of disruptive tenants or residents? We have some managers that just kind of used to have managers that just hide their head in the ground, and other residents would come up and complain because people were playing loud music, or they were parking their cars in the wrong places, or they had disruptive people come over, friends come over, and the manager would just say, yeah, well, it'll go away. They won't come over. We'll ask them, and they might ask them, but then they don't enforce it. They'll ask them to make sure the residents don't come over because their friends don't come over because they're causing issues. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and then they don't do it. Personally, we have a policy that and we tell our residents, it's right in the lease. It says you are responsible for your guests. And if your guests are causing a problem and you don't fix it, we'll fix it. And the way we're going to fix it, we're evicting you. We're kicking you out because you're not doing your part. As a matter of fact, one of my students had a grandfather, a guy that was in his 70s-ish, I think he was 70, 80, and his grandson kept coming over. Well, we found out his grandson was selling drugs at our property. So we told the grandfather, if the grandson comes over anymore, and by the way, we found this out from the police department because we have a good relationship with them, and we want to find out what's going on, what they think about our residents. And of course, we tell them what we think if we think there's something going on with our residents so that they can keep an eye on them. And we basically told them, if your grandson comes over again, we're evicting you. You don't have to evict somebody just because they're not making payments. That isn't the only thing that allows you to evict them. So we actually did evict them because his grandson came over again, and we want to have a nice, safe environment for our residents. So yeah, we're willing to kick out one in order to keep the rest of the residents in the property. Because quite frankly, if the good residents, if they don't feel safe and secure, they're leaving. And if the good residents leave, that means you're just going to fill up with more bad residents. Okay? How do they handle evictions? Who takes care of that? Do they want me to take care of that? Or are they going to take care of that? Or do they post the pay or quit notices on the door, and then they pass on the process of the eviction process to an attorney? Just ask the question, find out how they do it, find out how much it's going to cost you. And of course, if the eviction goes through, how is the resident removed? Does the manager take care of that? Does the manager interface with the police department or the sheriff's department because they have to come and just watch and make sure everything stays calm and orderly? Or are they expecting that to come back on me, and now I have to contact the sheriff's department or the police department in order to come in and take care of the eviction? Find out what they're going to do and find out if there's any additional cost to that. They might take care of it, but they'll say, well, we do evictions, and it's $200 fee for the eviction to the resident, plus we charge you $200 for our part of it. Oh, if you need us to call the sheriff's department or the police department, and you want us there with the police department when they show up, then there's another $100, $200, $150 charge for us to go out and do it. You want to find out all these things ahead of time before you hire them so that you're not surprised later on down the road. Okay. Other questions. What do you do with the security deposit? What's the policy? Some owners treat the security deposit as what they call a risk fee. So it's not a deposit at all. It's immediately, as soon as it comes in, it goes right into their working capital account because they never plan on giving that money back to the resident. The security deposits, most of the time, are going to go in their own separate account so that they're there as a security deposit, as a deposit to give back to the residents when the residents move out, assuming that there is no damage or late charges of anything like that has to come out of that deposit amount. Okay. Do they offer a move-in gift? A move-in gift. So when they move in, they should be getting some type of move-in package. Usually it's a little plastic container that has things like the local information on the local schools, emergency numbers. There might be flyers in there from local restaurants, hair salons, nail salons. It could be grocery store flyers. We even used to get payment from our cable companies. We had Time Warner and Comcast and 2 different properties, and they gave us some pretty hefty payments to be known as what they were calling their exclusive marketer. So in that packet, once we had an exclusive marketer like Comcast, we could then no longer put in flyers for DirecTV or Dish TV or anything like that. We could only put in, and that's because that's what Comcast paid for. They paid to be the exclusive cable or TV satellite provider to our complex. Other types of move-in gifts that you might want to consider, your management company should consider if they're not doing it. And of course, they're going to charge you for these things, and rightly so. It shouldn't come out of their pocket. A gift card to Domino's or Pizza Hut or some pizza chain that's in the area for 25 bucks. So when they move in, it's like, hey, we know you've got all this stuff that you're going to be packing and unpacking. A lot of people don't have their dishes unpacked yet, or they're dirty and they need to wash them, and the utensils are dirty. They might not have napkins. So a matter of fact, we had one of our properties in Texas where what they used to give was, of all things, they used to give them a plunger, and on the stick of the plunger that was probably about 1.5 feet high, they'd put on 2 or 3 rolls of toilet paper, or a roll or 2 of toilet paper and a roll of paper towels, because everybody forgets that stuff. Plus, of course, the plunger helps if you get a little backed up. Another thing that they used to give, of all things in Texas, along with the plunger and the toilet paper and the paper towels, was an ice scraper. People don't think that you need ice scrapers in Eastern Texas, but guess what? The roommates, if it was 2 different people in a 2-bedroom unit, they used to fight over who got the ice scraper, because it was something that people just don't think about. So give them something when they move in, because you want them to remember you and your property. So see if your management company does that, and if they don't, suggest it to them, train them, educate them, help them become a better property management company. We already talked earlier about resident retention program, so I'm not going to go into that any further. How do the residents contact for maintenance issues? Again, is there a website? Is there an app that they can do on their phone? Do they have to come up to the management office? How do they take care of those things? Just ask for the procedure to find out how that's managed. The main thing is it should be in writing of some sort, and you should also have access to it as the owner of the property. So there's a lot of management software out there that will allow the residents to put their maintenance requests right into the online system, plus the management company. If somebody walks into the office and says, hey, my doorknob is loose in the bathroom, they should be making a note of that and then putting it into the file, the electronic file with the software, so that you can keep a track of that, to make sure that, number one, it got recorded, number two, that it got completed. It'll actually show who the maintenance person was that went out and actually completed that repair and when it was completed. So you can see when it came in and when it was fixed. If it takes 2 or 3 days to fix a loose knob, that's ridiculous. It shouldn't take 2 or 3 days to fix a loose knob. Yes, I know it's not an emergency, but you should try and get in your management company, and hopefully they tell you this when you ask them about any maintenance issues, is how long does it actually take them to get to repairs on a general basis. Usually it should be the same day. You also want to find out how the unit turnover is handled. Do they have to notify you? Do they have to give you pictures? Do you have to approve all the different things that they're going to do or not? And is there a dollar limit? Is there a dollar limit that at this amount or less, they can just automatically go in and take care of it? Or at that amount and higher, do they have to get your written approval in order to move forward with it? I also really want to know whether or not they use their own employees or contractors. I've had bad experience with property managers that use their own employees, because when they do that, they seem to need to keep their employees working in order to bring in revenue, in order to justify paying their employees. So it may seem like it's a good idea for the management company to have their own employees to do the maintenance, but what I found on smaller properties, not necessarily the larger ones where we have some properties that are 100, 120, 150 units, that makes sense, because that maintenance employee is your maintenance employee. He or she are on site. You're paying them to be there on a regular basis. So there shouldn't be any surprises when it comes to the dollar amount. But when a smaller company on a smaller property has their own employees, they need to justify their paycheck. So I had one property where literally I had a service call a very expensive service call about every 2 months. It was driving me nuts. Matter of fact, 1 year they replaced the garbage disposal twice in 1 year. That's ridiculous. And one time there was actually a couple of dimes in the garbage disposal. Well, they didn't charge the resident, they charged me. And I went back to them and said, wait a second, why are you charging me for the garbage disposal when the tenant broke it? Oh, well, we're going to charge the tenant back for it too. Well, guess what? They never did. They sent a bill to the tenant, to the resident, to pay them back or reimburse them for the damaged garbage disposal, but then they never followed up with the resident to make sure that they paid it. They just said, well, if they don't pay it, we'll get it out of their deposit when they leave. Well, they left after 2 years. So after 2 years and all the other damage that they caused to the property, not only did we lose out on the money for the garbage disposal, but they trashed the carpet because the management company wasn't going in on a regular basis and inspecting the property. So that's another thing you should ask them, is how often do they go in and inspect the property? I'll tell you right now, mine are required to go in twice a year. Usually they go in about 6 months after the resident moves in, and then about a month before the lease renews. With the 30-day notice, they go in and they're checking the property again. Number one, if they're not going to renew the lease, they still need to inspect the unit. So they do a quick courtesy look at the unit to see if there's any damage that the resident's going to have to pay for, like a hole in the wall, which is not normal wear and tear. Or if they are going to be renewing the lease, so they want to renew the lease, you also want to know that they're taking care of the property, because if they're not taking care of the property, you don't want to renew their lease, or the property management company shouldn't want to renew the lease. So find out how they handle that. Do they go in and they do inspections? Do they take care of all of it, or do they have to get your approval to do any type of unit turnover? Again, I do prefer the contractors as opposed to employees, unless it's a really, really big company where you're already paying for them. We talked earlier about doing the make ready or turning over the units. That should be done in a couple of days. What is their policy on maintenance? How do they take care of that? Again, that comes down to the dollar amount. Is there a minimum dollar amount that they'll just take care of stuff? And if it's over that, they have to get your approval. And then I actually already touched on that too, about inspecting the properties. How often do they inspect the units? Again, mine is twice a year, because you want to see if you want to have them come in. Okay, other questions. Management and accounting and that kind of stuff. Do they use management software? If they don't use management software, I ask them if they're willing to bring in management software. By the way, Excel and QuickBooks are not management software. They are tools to help you do your job better, but that's not management software. Management software are things like AppFolio, AppFolio, Buildium, Buildium, Buildium.com, and appfolio.com. Another big one is Rent Manager, rentmanager.com, rentmanager.com, rentmanager.com. Find out what they're using. And of course, if they say, oh yeah, we use Excel and QuickBooks, see, well, will you try one of these other ones? Will you pick it up? Will you learn it? Will you actually put it into use? It makes management reporting and tracking so much easier for everybody. And if they're not willing to use some type of management software, go find somebody else. You also want to find out what kind of reports you receive. You should be getting on a monthly basis a rent roll, a balance sheet, a profit and loss statement. And that profit and loss statement should roll for 12 months. It's called a T12. Make sure that you get good property financials and have them give you, if you can, a sample report. They can redact the name of the current property owner and the name of the property and all that kind of stuff, but you still want to see what reports they're using and have them give you a sample report. You also want to find out how often you get them. As I mentioned, monthly, you should be getting the rent roll, the balance sheet, and the profit and loss statement. You should also be getting a tenant ledger from them on a monthly basis. You should be getting quarterly reports on things like maintenance, things that need to be done now, things that need to be done later, somewhere down the road that you can plan on, like roofs, windows, doors, bigger ticket items, landscaping. Find out what they're doing. Are those reports downloadable? By being able to download them into Excel, it makes it a lot easier for you to look at that report and massage it and see if there's other things that you want to look at. Maybe you can take one of those reports and put it into Excel and then sort it by lease expiration date, so you know which leases are going to be coming up sooner rather than it just being in unit number sequence. What are their monthly fees? What are they charging? Is it based on just a straight percentage? One of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make is they assume that when somebody says, yeah, we charge an 8% fee, that's it. And then all of a sudden they get surprised because they didn't read the contract that they have with the management company and find out that, oh yeah, it's 8%, but we also charge 1 month or half a month's rent the first time we put somebody into your property. Or every time, I shouldn't say the first time, every time we put somebody in your property, we take that first month's rent. You need to read all of the details. I've seen where management companies charge for maintenance personnel to go out. There's like a trip charge, even for their own employees to go out. Just to take a look at something, there's a minimum charge. You also want to make sure that whatever those monthly fees are, especially if they're charging just a flat percentage, it needs to be based off the rent that's collected, not the rents that's scheduled. They need to be rewarded for what they collected, and they should not be paid for what they don't collect. Now, so there are some companies out there that charge you, let's say, 8% of the collected rent, or this amount. They'll set an amount. It could be $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month, $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month. 8% of the collected rent, or this amount, whichever is higher. So double check your numbers, because you're going to need to know that in order to do your financials, so that you can be comfortable knowing that there's not going to be any surprises at the end of the year for you and or your investors. All right, accounting fees. Is there a minimum base fee per month? Goes back to what I talked about earlier. Sometimes they also have a minimum fee per month. Do they charge the place of resident? I already talked about these. Another one that I didn't talk about is renewal fee. There's some companies out there that when they have the same resident in the property, but they have to go out and have the existing resident sign a new lease for the next year, they might charge you a renewal fee. Could be 150, 200, 250 bucks, or even a half month's rent to get them to do that, for them to take the time to go out and actually have that resident sign that lease all over again. So make sure you add all those things up. You also want to find out how many units you need to have for them to put a manager on site. At what point do they recommend putting a manager on site? Obviously, for 20 units, 30 units, you don't need an on-site manager. But somewhere around the 60, 70, 80 unit mark, depending on the quality of the property and the quality of the residents, you need to seriously consider putting an on-site manager full-time 5 or 6 days a week out at the property. The more needy the residents are, the lower quality of the property, you're probably going to have to start around that 60 to 70 mark by putting a manager on site. So someone's there to keep track of what's going on and make sure things don't get out of control at the property. Okay, do they charge for an on-site manager? Usually they'll charge you not only whatever their minimum base fee is for the collected rent, but they'll also charge the salary for that manager as well. They'll actually charge or they don't charge you, but what they do is they do a pass-through for the salary that they're paying to that manager or a maintenance person. And then, of course, the eviction fees. Who pays the eviction fees? Is that certainly they're going to try and get that from the resident, but in the meantime, they're not getting it from the resident. They're usually going to charge you those eviction fees, and then they're going to tack those fees back onto the resident and ask the judge, if they get the eviction approved, to tack that on to the fees so that hopefully you can get reimbursed. All right, last few questions here. How often do the owners get paid? How often do they actually send that money to you? Do they do it once a month? Do they do it once a quarter? The other thing that you might want to check on is who pays things like the utility bills. Do they take care of the utility bills? Do they pay your monthly mortgage payment? Do they pay your insurance payments? Do they pay your property taxes? Do they take care of all of that? Do you want them to take care of all of that? And a lot of our larger properties, our property manager takes care of all of it. They send the mortgage payment every month. They pay the electric bill, the water bill. They take care of all of it. Why? Because this is a business, and the business needs to support itself. So I want the manager to do as much as possible. So what I do is I'm the asset manager. I hire the property manager. I oversee them. They oversee the property. They do the day-to-day stuff. I get involved on a minimal basis. And of course, the worse things are going, the more I get involved. And of course, the smoother things are running, the less I have to get involved. And I can do things like come down here to the Bahamas and spend a couple days down here and not have to worry about the snow and the cold, because they're back there actually doing their job, because that's what they are paid to do. The last question I ask them is, why should I hire you? I love hearing their answer to that response. Sometimes it catches them off guard and they're like, whoa, because you need a management company. Well, yeah, I do need a management company, but why do I need you? Why should I hire you? What makes you special? Why am I going to be happy with you in a year as opposed to pissed off at you and want to fire you in 2 or 3 months? And listen to their response. And again, don't be afraid to act. If the property manager answers all the questions the right way and you feel very comfortable with them and you hire them, don't be afraid to fire them if they're not walking the walk. They need to do what they said they were going to do. They need to take care of the residents and the property this way that they said they were going to do it. If they don't, you have a conversation with them and let them know if you're not happy. And conversely, let them know if you are happy. If they're doing a great job and doing exactly what they said they were going to do, let them know that. Give them that recognition. Give them that congratulations and the pat on the back that they need, because then they'll continue to be good managers for you. All right. So you found the right manager. Now what? Well, you need to make sure you get all of their reports on a monthly basis, the rent roll, delinquency report, maintenance reports. If they are paying your bills, you want to get copies of all those bills. They shouldn't just tell you they pay the electric bill. They should actually give you a copy of the bill so you can save it either in a paper file or on your hard drive. You want to review the documents to make sure that everything is accurate and that there's no hanky-panky going on with the numbers. And of course, you should have at least a monthly call with your property manager. If things are going smoothly, it's once a month. If things aren't going smoothly, you might be talking once or twice or 3 times a week. So you'll be the judge of that. And of course, you also want to compare the reports to the bank statements. If they told you they collected $20,000 in income and rent, there better be, it better show in the bank statement that there were $20,000 deposited. Okay, other things you want to do. Whoops. You want the property manager to do things like this. You want them or you to come up with a list of the scheduled activities. What are they going to do every month? What are they going to do every quarter? What are they going to do every half year? What are they going to do once a year? I would like to drive the property quarterly, but a lot of times with my properties being so far away, I do it at least twice a year. I come out, I show up, I don't tell the manager I'm coming. I show up and I drive the property and I take pictures and I write down notes of what I think need to be taken care of at the property. Then I call them while I'm at the property and I tell them I'm coming in the next day in 24 hours and can they meet me out at the property? And then I want to see what it looks like the next day. Now, I do that especially the first time right after we buy the property, usually within a couple of weeks, because that way, but when I show up unannounced, I've now set the expectation that I'm going to show up at some point during the year, a couple of times during the year, and I'm not telling you I'm coming in because I want them to be on their toes. I don't want to come and find a whole bunch of trash and branches and stuff like that laying all over the property the first day, and when I call and tell them that I'm coming in the next day, all of a sudden I come up the next day and everything's nice and clean. And they say, oh, look how beautiful everything is. Like, yeah, and then I take out my phone and I show them the pictures and I say, this is what it looked like yesterday. And then you can see they're a little embarrassed, like, yeah, well, it doesn't normally look like that. It usually looks like it looks like today. Bullshit. That's not the way it works. So by setting that expectation, they are now on their toes, so they know that I'm going to stop in at any particular time. And hopefully I never see that ever again. Last part of this, of course, is I want them to do an annual rental survey. Usually I'll have them do it twice a year where they go out and they survey other rental properties that are similar to my rental property so that they can tell me what we should raise the rent to, or should we include water or not include water? Should we include internet or not include internet? Should we take the rent up $5 a month, $10 a month, $50 a month? They should do that at least once a year, if not twice a year, so you can stay on top of your rental amounts and your rental income and maximize the returns on your property. Find out what kind of marketing plan that they have. How many calls do they generate based on those marketing things? Do they advertise in Craigslist? Do they do newspaper ads? Do they do signs? Where's that information coming from? What kind of area, what kind of demand is in the area? Is it a popular area where everybody wants to live there? Or is it an area where they tell you, well, we're going to be struggling because this isn't the greatest area and it's really hard to find good people. So unfortunately, because of that, it's going to take us a little bit longer, and we're going to have to do some extra steps. There's different marketing stuff like Appfolio. You can actually go through Appfolio and actually send out an email blast or an advertising blast to, I think it's like 16, 17, 18 different websites, Zillow and Rentometer and a whole bunch of other websites, and you can do a market blast if you have it set up properly. Repairs on the property, who, what, where, when. Again, is that their property manager? Is that their own maintenance people? Is a contractor? How long does it take people to get out there? Who's doing the repairs? Are they qualified? Do they need to be licensed? HVA people need to be licensed because they're working with the heating and air conditioning on the property, and there's electricity involved. So double check all those things, ask all those questions. You want to review your late tenants, who's late and why. And of course, if they are in the eviction process, where are they at? Have they just been given their pay or quit notice? Has the pay or quit notice expired and now they're moving on to the eviction process? What's the process? Has the attorney been notified? Or is the manager going to go take care of that? Has the court been notified? Has the paperwork been filed? Because usually it's anywhere from 7 to 10 to 14 days from the time you file with the court to actually get your appearance in court. Who's going to take care of all those things? You want to analyze your numbers on a monthly basis, pro forma versus actual. Excuse me. You want to make sure that your actual numbers are coming in towards your budgeted numbers. Are you on target? If not, why not? What's the reason for that? Are your operating expenses where they're supposed to be? You can also go to IREM and buy some reports from IREM that will show you where you rate compared to other properties, other similar properties in the market. So you want to make sure that you're within those acceptable ranges and not overpaying for repairs and maintenance on your property. Your maintenance should only be about 5% of your effective gross income. Now, it's usually maybe 5 to 10% of your effective gross income. So that's another number that you can look at with your maintenance. Now, certainly there's going to be some times where you're at 20% because you have some unexpected larger ticket item things come in. And then other times when you're at 1 or 2% or spending hardly any money on maintenance. On average over the entire year, it should be between 5 and 10%. You also want to look at your occupancy rate. Are you at least at 95% or higher in your occupancy? That should be your target, to be at 95% at least. By the way, if you're always at 100% occupancy on a large apartment complex, you're not charging enough for rent. You should always have people coming and going in the property. Not that you want them to come and go, but again, if you have higher than 95% occupancy consistently, you're either really, really good at marketing or you're not charging enough rent. Don't be afraid to raise the rent. All right. So that completes that particular section. Dan, do you modify the questions, or do you moderate the questions, or do you want me to do the questions? How do you want to handle that?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and tee them up for you, and you can ask them away or answer them away.
Awesome.
So how about this? So I'll just kind of go through a couple of these real quick here. We have plenty of time. Got 15 minutes to answer as many of these as we can.
Excellent.
Any thoughts on the admin fees? Some of the managers charge $125 to $150 for admin fees, and some say we cannot justify it. Why do we need to charge those fees?
Well, I guess it depends on what they mean by admin fee. Are they just talking about a flat monthly fee for administration? Does that take care of bookkeeping and that kind of stuff? So certainly for me, if the admin fee is a monthly basis, or is it by resident? If it's by resident and they're paying $150 a month to administer for a resident, that is ridiculous. If it's $150 per month per property, what does it cover? If it covers a bookkeeper, I'd be more than happy to pay $100 to $150 a month for bookkeeping, because it's not necessarily specialized, but it's one of those things where you come down to the time value of money. Would I rather pay someone else $150 to do 10 hours of work, or would I rather do that myself? Well, if it actually is 10 hours of work, guess what? That's $15 an hour. I'm worth far more than $15 an hour. So if that person wants to write back in again and tell us what that admin fee actually covers, if they know, then it certainly justifies it. If they're just charging $150 just because they say they're going to charge a $150 admin fee, then I would ask them why, number one. And then number two, I'd check with the competition. If everybody's charging $150 to $200 admin fee, chances are you're not going to get away from it.
Yeah, that's definitely what I think he's referring to here. I think he replied back here, admin fees is charged to the new tenant during a move-in. I think a lot of people are calling it now, instead of a security deposit, so you don't have to hold it in a reserve, just call it an application. I mean, an admin
An
fee or something
admin
like
fee.
that.
Well, the admin fee could be just their justification to administer that move-in on move-in day, where they take the time to go out and meet the resident on site, give them the keys, walk the property with them. They should be taking pictures, if not a video of the property, as the resident is moving in or right before the resident moves in, so that in case there's any damage when the resident moves out, you've got that photo or video information to go back and confirm whether the hole was in the wall or not when they moved in. And of course, if it wasn't there when they moved in, that's a problem that they're going to have a very hard time. So maybe that's what the fee is covering, is them going out and working with that resident. One thing you might want to check and see is, can you put that in your application to, or your lease agreement, to see if the property manager will pass that fee on to the resident. So in some areas, you might be able to do that, where you pass it on to the resident, and it's a cost of moving in. They might call it a move-in fee, where they justify going out and spending that time with the resident to verify and go through everything and show them how to use the stove and the refrigerator and make sure everything's ready to go.
Is it better to have on-site management, or to hire a property, like a property management company to manage it?
Well, it's going to depend on how many units you have and what is justified based on the income that the property generates. To me, it's always better to have an on-site manager, but you're not going to have an on-site manager with a 20-unit property, right? At least not an official manager. Now, even on some of our smaller properties, when we had smaller properties, we always have one of the residents on site keep an eye on things. I don't know if you remember Mrs. Kravitz from the Bewitched show. I know I'm dating myself, but years ago there was a show out called Bewitched, and Mrs. Kravitz always, she was always with the blinds, with the mini blinds up, and she's looking, oh my God, I think she's a witch. Right? She's always watching everything that's going on in the neighborhood. You want a resident like that that's going to pick up the phone and call you, or isn't even afraid to go out and confront residents who are doing things that they're not supposed to do. We have residents that will pull their cars up on the lawn to work on them. It's like, no, this Mrs. Kravitz will go out and say, you can't do this. Get your car off. Matter of fact, I had one lady I met years ago that had a lady on site. She was basically a grandmother. She was in her 60s, and she had no problem letting all the residents know that she was packing. And she didn't mean she was getting ready for a move. She meant she has a gun. She has a concealed weapons permit. She has a gun, and she's not afraid to go get it if you're going to piss her off and not listen to what she tells you. And she was the Mrs. Kravitz for that property, and everybody loved her. And if you didn't love her and she came out and told you she was packing, you learned to love her, because she meant what she meant, and she kept all the other residents in line.
Next question here is, what's your thought on becoming a business or equity partner with a new or existing property management company instead of outsourcing or becoming one?
So becoming a business or equity partner with the property management company. That's a good question, simply because you're now potentially, if you become a business partner with them, you now are potentially liable for any issues that they get into. So to me, I don't know if that would be a good idea. I'd have to mull that over a little bit further. Certainly, if I had enough units, and I tell people, because the next section of this actual presentation, quite frankly, is about creating your own property management company. I recommend that if you want to start your own management company, make sure you have a minimum of 200 units. But as far as partnering with somebody else that's already in business, there's pros and cons. One of the pros is you're potentially getting another revenue stream. You also potentially have reduced expenses when it comes to them taking care of your property. But on the other hand, if you're not the person running it, you are at their whim and their beck and call. And if there's some type of fair housing issue or liability issue that comes up, you're potentially going to be held liable for that too. And it's something you have no control over.
What's your exit strategy if you do not like the job that the property management company is doing? Like, what wording do you like to see, and what wording do you like to see in the contract prior to signing it?
Yeah. So most property management companies have wording in it that says we can fire you for cause. If we catch you stealing from us, if we catch you deceiving us, lying to us, we can say, here's the cause, you're fired. They also say that, of course, if there is no cause, the management agreement is in place for at least 1 year. And of course, at the end of the year, if you don't terminate the lease, it automatically renews for an additional year. However, even having said that, we have management companies that we don't like. And quite frankly, they don't like us because they're not doing the things that we would like them to do when we would like them to do it. And we go to them, we have a conversation. We say, look, we'd like you to change this process. We'd like you to do it this way or do it that way. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they can't, or they say they can't because they might think it's illegal or immoral or something like that, which we would never ask them to do that anyway. I think they're just blowing smoke. And then sometimes they're just like, well, we don't do it that way. This is how we do it, period. Well, we'll ask them a couple of times to fix it. If they don't fix it, we'll say, look, we're obviously not getting along here. You're not doing what we need to have done, and you don't seem to be interested in it. We're getting pissed off. People aren't paying the rent. You're not putting people in on time. We need to part ways. And a lot of times when you just have that conversation because you're at that point where they know things aren't going well between the two of you, they're more than happy to step away because it's frustrating for them as well. Because there are a lot of managers, they're just stuck in their way. It's like, no, this is how we do it right here. This little box right here. This is how we do it. And if you don't fit in that box and you don't want us to do something that's in this box, oh, well, too bad. Well, we try and educate them and give them additional things that they can do to make their business better, make them better managers and for themselves and for their other clients. They don't want to change. They just don't want to listen. And so you just ask them, and usually the parties are pretty amicable. It's usually, yep, you're right. It's not working out. Sure, no problem here. We'll leave at the end of the month.
Do you have any weekly reports that you ask for?
The only weekly report we want is a vacancy report. We want to understand where we're at with the vacancy and if units are being filled or if somebody moved out in the middle of the week, in the middle of the night. Other than that, that's really the only weekly report we're getting. All the other financial reports we're getting are on a monthly basis.
For the smaller properties under 70 units, what unique challenges it poses for the owner being not able to have full-time staff dedicated to the property?
Sure. Well, the challenges are because there isn't someone there representing you as the owner of the property, there's things that can happen. You can have residents that are going amok. And this is why you want to have that Mrs. Kravitz on site so that they can keep an eye on those things. But there's still not a manager working for you that reports directly to you or to the management company. They do, but they don't, if that makes sense, because they're not an employee. So there are things that can happen. There are some residents that might be afraid of another resident because they're playing loud music. They go over and they ask them to turn it down. The person gets belligerent, tells them to go F yourself, get out of here. And then they don't listen. And then everybody gets afraid and timid because there's no one there that's willing to report them because as the phrase goes, snitches get stitches. That's a problem. We had a property years ago in Wichita where we found out after the fact that somebody had pulled around some huge boulders in the front parking lot around the side of the building to the back of the building where there's a huge grass courtyard and decided to change the oil in their truck on the grass.
Do you have any
with no drip pan? They didn't take the oil out and put it in a pan and then dispose of it. They just opened the little drain plug and dumped it out. So those are some of the things that happen, unfortunately, when you don't have a manager on site. Now, those are some horror stories, naturally. It doesn't happen like that all the time as long as you have somebody on the smaller properties like Mrs. Kravitz who is willing to get in somebody's face, or at the very least, they're willing to pick up the phone and they have no problem knowing, the residents knowing that they are going to pick up the phone and call the management company to basically tell them what's going on, to keep them in line.
Well, Anthony, we have about 3 minutes left, and I know you wanted to talk a little bit about your program that you have, and so sure. I want you to take a few minutes here and kind of share that. There was a couple other questions that came on, but for those of you, if you could take those questions to the MFIN forum and have those answered there, that would be great. I'll try to type in a couple of these answers if I have some familiarity with it. So, okay. Anthony, go ahead and close it out for us.
Sure, no problem. I appreciate that, Dan. So here's what I have for you guys. I do have a home study course. It's a flash drive. As a matter of fact, the flash drive looks like this. Nice little flash drive right there. Nice little flash drive, Apartment Mentors. It's an awesome little flash drive. It's got 37 files on it. It has 8 audio files that takes you through the 7 different steps that you need to buy properties. By the way, this works for any property. So even though this is about apartments, All of these steps and all the stuff that I teach help you with any type of property that you're going to buy, from locating the property all the way through the closing table. So there's 8 audio files. There's also a bunch of forms. There's over 9 different forms that I use to make offers, go under contract, addendums, LOIs, all that kind of stuff. It's excellent forms that come with it as part of it. There's software. There's a quick analysis software. By the way, this is all on the little flash drive here. There's a quick analysis software. We can analyze a deal in 10 or 15 minutes. There's an APOD software that goes into much, much more detail on the property analysis. You can make adjustments to your offer with some software. There's a mortgage payment calculator. There's 2 rent roll analysis software spreadsheets. These actually show you the true economic occupancy or true economic vacancy of the property. So even if the seller says, yeah, we got 5% vacancy, I actually show you in the software how to go through and input the information that the owner gives you, and then at the bottom it tells you the true economic occupancy, so you can basically call BS on some owners if they're not willing to, or if they tell you that there's 5% vacancy. We found properties that have 20, 22, 25% vacancy because they're not collecting the income that they actually say they're collecting, and it shows up on that rent roll analysis software very, very quickly. There's 2 one-hour videos on the 2 biggest pieces of software on this little flash drive. There's the quick analysis software tutorial and the APOD tutorial. APOD stands for Annual Property Operating Data Software. And it's just amazing. I go through each and every box and show you what I put in and why I put it in. There's 2 bonus audios. One is why I love apartment buildings, and one is on patience, perseverance, and persistence pays off. And it's an interview I did with a couple of my students up in Dayton, Ohio, about the first deal that they got done. It was the 3rd time they went after the deal because they wanted to get the right deal, not just a deal for the sake of getting a deal. So it was very, very powerful. And not only do I ask them questions, but I have other students on the same interview asking questions as well too, so they can learn from it. I also have a 4-day boot camp. The 4-day boot camp talks about, I go through all the steps, but in much, much more detail on finding properties. I show over 18 different ways to find apartment buildings, how to do the quick analysis in 10 to 15 minutes, how to make offers to get recognized by the seller. So, and again, it's not just about the price, it's about offering the right terms, so we talk about that. I spend almost a full day in the 4-day boot camp on different ways that you can finance your property. The traditional ways using lenders, and non-traditional ways, master lease options, wrap mortgages, subject tos, a bunch of different ways, creative ways that you can buy properties. Due diligence, we spend several hours on the due diligence. What documents do you ask the seller for? And then once you get those documents, what do you do with them? How do you analyze them? Like the rent roll analysis. How do you take that information when the seller gives it to you, you put it into the software so that you know the true economic vacancy of the property. I also teach you how to negotiate the deals before you go under contract and then after you go under contract when you do your due diligence and the financing and find out that the property wasn't as described and you have to go back to the seller and renegotiate, or in the terminology that they use in the industry is retrade, to get the right deal for you and your investors on that property, and then all the way through the closing table, what to expect at the closing table and what to do if something is wrong. I also talk about past deals, the good deals and the bad deals. We've had some deals that didn't go so well. We actually, unfortunately, lost a couple properties because we made some mistakes. I share those mistakes with you because I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I make. I'm going to tell you what went right, and more importantly, I'm also going to tell you what went wrong. Michael, who was from San Diego, he now actually lives in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. He spent over $100,000 in workshops and boot camps, and he says that my Apartment Investing Mastery Boot Camp is one of the 2 best that he has ever taken. Something else that I offer that nobody else does is at the end of the 4-day boot camp, if you tell me it wasn't worth your time and it wasn't worth your money, I will give you twice your money back. I will give you double your money back, and I do that because you may not, this might be the first time you've ever heard of me speaking, so I want you to take a chance on me and buy my program and come, because I want to prove to you that it is the best program on the market for education. And I back it up by putting my money where my mouth is. All you have to do is come all 4 days, and at the end, just tell me what you thought of the program. Okay? Kiyosaki, I don't know if you know this, Robert Kiyosaki made money with apartment buildings. That's what allowed him to quit his job at Xerox and then write the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A bunch of my students have made money with apartments. I haven't shown you those slides because we're out of time. So how do you do it? Well, first off, the home study course by itself is $995. The boot camp by itself is $995. But wait, there's more. I know we're running up against the clock, Dan.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. There's also on the flash drive, there's 6 one-hour videos of my one-day workshop. The 6 one-hour videos step you through the basics of understanding apartments, how to evaluate them, how to crunch the numbers, how to figure out whether or not the numbers make sense. Okay. I also guarantee my home study course and my boot camp twice. I told you about the boot camp. I tell people you get the boot camp and the home study course for half the price, but you get twice the content of anybody else. And that's why I guarantee it twice. The one is on the home study course, you get your money back guarantee. On the flash drive, the actual home study course itself, I'll give you 1 full year to use all the information on the hard drive. And if you tell me it wasn't worth your time and trouble, I will give you 100% of your money back on the home study course. The last thing that I throw in is an 8-week follow-up coaching program. I don't want you just to come to the boot camp and learn a lot of great stuff. I now want you to go out and take that information and put it into usage. So what I do is I put you in a small group of people from the boot camp, and you have a step-by-step instructions of what you're going to do over that 8-week period with your team, and you're going to go out and you're going to do it. You're going to research markets, because I'm going to teach you that on the first morning in the boot camp on locating properties. Once you research markets on the internet, then you're going to actually start doing more defined research by calling people in those markets. The whole idea over this 8-week program is at the end of the 8-week program, several of you should have properties under contract or at least an accepted LOI, because that's why you're coming to the boot camp in the first place, right? Is to get information and then go out and put it into action and be successful with it. So we give you an 8-week program, so you just don't go home and put the books up on the shelf and say, okay, what do I do now? It's all included. So if you notice, the whole price, if you paid the whole thing, it's almost $2,600 retail price. However, with the different groups that I talk with, I do a special. So with Multifamily Investor Nation, it's $1,395 for the whole thing, and that's for 2 people. That's less than $700 per person. For you each get a flash drive, you each get to come to the 4-day boot camp, you each get the downloads of the one-day workshop, and you both get to participate in the 8-week follow-up coaching program, all for $1,395 total, less than $700 per person. But wait, there's more. These are all the different boot camps that I'm doing around the country. I don't go out and pick these locations. They pick me. The real estate groups that are in these areas, they talk by word of mouth, they know the quality and the depth of education that I teach in my 4-day boot camp. They invite me to come to their area and teach their members. So that's why I came up with this list, because these are all the different groups that have invited me to come out and teach their investors. So you can see there's a whole bunch there. There's also coming up in Chicago, Denver, Irvine, California. I think early next year in 2020, I'm doing San Antonio. So I'm all over the country from coast to coast. I told you about the double your money back guarantee. Here's again a list. You get the USB, everybody gets a USB stick. You get 1 seat at the boot camp per person. The video downloads of the one-day workshop, each person gets to participate in the 8-week follow-up coaching program. One last bonus for you. Here's the last bonus. Because you're on this weekend and you're watching this program, I'm going to give you one additional program. Oh, I forgot to put the value on there. It's a $795 class. It's a 2-day asset management workshop. It's about how you interface with the property manager. You're not going to manage it, but how do you interface with the property manager? How do you work with your investors? How do you do the numbers? How do you track the records and the P&L statements and working with your CPA? It's about managing the asset. It's a 2-day class. It's $795 per person.
Hey, Anthony, I think you might not be showing the right slide, so we're still looking at the any questions one. Do you have a different slide you're showing?
I do. I have one that says register now.
I don't see that one. We're stuck on the any questions one.
Okay, hang on a second here. Let me go up. Do I have to unshare and then reshare?
You might have to, yeah.
Okay, let me go new share. How's that? Did that change?
Not yet. Maybe just stop sharing and then press the share button again. Maybe that'll let you switch it around.
How's that?
There you go. That's it.
Okay. So, man, you missed all my slides. I wish I'd known that. All right. So anyway, here's all the information that I was talking about. Certainly, you've got all this information here. I can go back very quickly just so you can take a look at it. There's a double your money back guarantee. That way you can get it all in your recording if you're recording it. Okay, there's the price for everybody. Sorry about that. Thanks for letting me know that, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
It switched on my screen, but obviously it didn't switch on yours. There's the list of all the different boot camps. So you can notice on the screen there, it's got all the different boot camps. It's $13.95 for the flash drive, the boot camp for 2 people. Double your money back guarantee. There's the list again of everything you get. Less than $700 each. All right, there we go. So here's the bonus one. This is what I did not put on the screen, or I forgot to put the price in. Again, it's a 2-day asset management workshop at $795 per person. Again, you and your partner each get that. So it's an extra $795 program thrown in. Again, it's only $13.95 each. $13.95 total for 2 people. So you get the flash drive, seat at the boot camp, 1-day workshop downloads, the 8-week follow-up coaching, and this class right here, the 2-day asset management workshop for you and your guests for free. All you have to do is by Tuesday night at 5 o'clock. This ends at 5 o'clock Mountain Time on Tuesday the 22nd. 5 o'clock Tuesday night and 22nd. Call Shannon at my office, 303-745-5525. 303-745-5525. Tell her you want the Multifamily Investor Nation special that Anthony talked about on the weekend webinar or boot camp, and she'll make sure she gets you taken care of.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I also put that into the comments box here as well. I really appreciate you coming on, Anthony, all the way from the Bahamas there. Go enjoy the rest of your time, and we'll look forward to catching up with you later.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you having me. Have a great weekend, everybody.
All right, we are in a little bit of a break here. We have about 5 more minutes left in this break, and so we're going to go get some refreshments and go to the bathroom, and we'll be back at 5 o'clock. This is the last session of the entire event. Can you believe it? We're all the way down to the last 2 sessions. So we have Kathy Fetke coming up. We're talking about raising money legally for your multifamily syndication in room 1, and then that's going to be this room right here. In room 2, we have Matt and Elizabeth Faircloth, Matt and Liz Faircloth, and their topic is investing with your spouse, how to make it all work, So go if you want to go right now. This is the last session getting ready to come up. So make sure you register for the next summit. Go to nextmfin.com. Register for that next summit. It's only $97. And you also can upgrade to VIP for $100. So it's half price of what it is right now. So for $197, you can get VIP access. You have some time, go do that. And we already have over 100 people already registered for that. So we're really looking forward to preparing that one. And we have a lot of ideas that make it even bigger and better. So make sure you go ahead and register to get it at the lowest price. And then also go to mfinsurvey.com and fill out the survey. It's very important for you to do that. And that will also get you entered into a drawing for a $500 gift card to Ruth's Chris. So we'll be back here in a few minutes with Kathy Fetke.